I thought that Kamala Harris did what she needed to do. I thought that she hit all of the points um, of differentiation between herself and Donald Trump. I think that she made clear, in my mind, I'm listening to her, and I'm listening to her talk about what she wants to do for small business owners, what she wants to do for the middle class, what she wants to do for seniors, what she wants to do to preserve the Affordable Care Act, Medicare, um, what she wants to do with food prices and the price of goods in general. I'm listening to her outline all those things in more specificity than we have ever heard from Donald Trump on anything. I'm listening to her outline those and just rattle them off in this speech. And a lot of these things are things that she's articulated before during campaign, where people say that she's light on policy. But again, more specifics on this than Donald Trump has with anything other than when he's talking about tariffs and how that's how he's attempting to pay for his balance his entire budget, which any economist that he sits across from tells him that it's nonsense and questions whether he even understands what tariffs mean. I'm listening to her rattle those things off. And then she talks about, I'm listening to her rattle those things off. And my mind goes, how strong does your cognitive dissonance have to be to hear this from Kamala? And granted, not people aren't necessarily hearing this for the first time from her. These are things that she's been talking about for a while. But to hear these things from Kamala and decide that you would rather trust the man who was gifted $400 million, who has a legacy of lawsuits for discrimination, who has a litany of lawsuits for not paying his bills, somebody who very visibly favored the uber rich the last time he was in office, the level of cognitive dissonance it takes to assess all of that information and decide that Donald Trump is the guy who's for the working man. Like I was listening to Kamala Harris and I said, you know, racism and sexism is a hell of a drug. It's got to be a hell of a drug. It really it has to be a hell of a drug. I don't understand how, I legitimately don't understand. And it's funny because I have a video coming out, which is, and I'll get to the race part of it, but I have a video coming out talking about these black MAGAs that Alex Wagner was talking to in Philly. And the cases that they were making were so nonsensical. I said, if I wanted to take you seriously, like if I didn't want to just dismiss your thoughts and your opinions as the inevitable conclusion of pick-meism, if I wanted to actually take you seriously, you would have to have better arguments than you're giving me. You would have to. Like, it's not possible for me to take you seriously by virtue of the contradictions that you are making. I don't understand fundamentally how you can process all this information and decide. And this is not for Black people necessarily, or Latinos, or this is for anybody who is uh, uh, unemployed, lower class, lower middle class, middle class. Okay, middle down. If you are middle down, I don't want, regardless of who you are or where you live, if you are middle down, I don't understand how you can process this information and decide that he's the one who's going to fight for me. And the inevitable conclusion I have to come to is that racism and sexism is a hell of a drug. It's a hell of a drug because, and I made this point, I don't remember what video it was exactly. Oh, I made this point. I was talking about Hillary Clinton. I said, you can give me all the excuses that you want about people's aversion to the Clintons and the Comey and her emails and Russian influence and all of that. All of that. Give me all of that. A white man would have overcame all of it. No way a white man with Hillary Clinton's resume would have ever lost that 2016 election. Ever. To Donald Trump. So that's number one. That's number one. Okay. When it comes to class. Okay. Let's get to identity. She's talking about growing up in Oakland. She's talking about going to civil rights rallies and things of that nature. I have said many times, and I've talked about how irrelevant her racial identity is. But it's just insane to me that not only can she, the ways in which we pick apart Kamala's campaign, the answers she gives, the things that she says, the way that we pick her apart in a way we don't do Donald Trump is no better exemplified than this race discussion. Because Candace Owens wants to go do a 23andMe and follow her ancestors and see exactly where are they from and who is this picture of and this, that, and the other thing, as if any of that makes Donald Trump less racist. I mean, really, as if any of that makes Donald Trump less racist. The fact that she can talk about her experiences extemporaneously, her experiences with Black people, her experiences helping Black people, she can just talk about them extemporaneously. When you talk about Donald Trump and his experiences with Black people, they're talking points. It's always HBCU funding. It's always Black unemployment, and First Step Act and criminal justice reform. Always, because you can't talk about literally anything else. That's all you got. If even they took themselves seriously, they would diversify the discussion more than that. And that's before you get to the litany of racial history that he has. But the thing that's so insane is you will have some Black people out here trying to create a wedge between their experiences and that of Kamala Harris, as if Donald Trump would ever blank on them if they was on fire. I mean, make it make sense. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not only is racism and sexism a hell of a drug, pick-meism is a hell of a drug. It's a hell of a drug. It's a hell of a drug. It is. I don't think I have ever. Let me think about this. You got, let's see, you got Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Donald Trump and Joe Biden would be the other one that comes to mind. But I'm thinking of such a clear and stark difference between two candidates literally the other two that come to mind are Trump and Biden and Trump and Clinton. Those are the other two that come to mind where there's such a stark difference between two candidates. But I'm like, you got Obama and Romney, Obama and McCain, you got Bush and Gore, you got Bush and was it Kerry? Bush and Kerry. We're gonna go back to Bush and Michael Dukakis. We got Clinton and it's just so stark and clear the fault lines between these two candidates. And I get how, if you are Elon Musk, supporting Donald Trump makes all the sense in the world. A man who is easily manipulated with flattery, a man who will just give you control of agencies he doesn't even know how they work, a man who will make sure that you keep and maintain all of your government contracts, a man who will give you all of the tax breaks that you want and will make you never have to come out of pockets. It makes all the sense in the world for Elon Musk to support Donald Trump heavily. If you are trying to make your mortgage every month, if the prices of goods has impacted you in a way where you actually have to start budgeting and looking back, like the kind of talking points that Republicans have been pointing at Kamala Harris and Democrats, how would what's in Elon Musk's best interest help you? Why would you think that the platform that Elon Musk is willing to compromise his own social media operation over, because it's that valuable to him, why do you think that would help you? Why would you think that? It's amazing. And one of the things that we've loved to one of the things that we've talked about at length is how projection is the answer, right? Every accusation is an admission. And they presented the case in the early stages of Kamala's campaign that it was all vibes. You tell me what other than vibes could and ism, vibes and ism is baked into vibes. Okay, when they were at MSG and they had it was ism vibes. It was ism vibes. The ism was the vibes. Okay, and when I say ism, I mean pick one. Okay, what other than vibes could convince a person who has been impacted by this inflation, or happens to be living check to check, or is drowning in student debt, or who is desperately trying to toe the union, support the union and advocating for better wages? What other than vibes could be the thing that has you putting on a red hat? Because I guess it's easier for you to hear a speech and that instantaneously make you feel better about your situation and your lot in life because you can subjugate other people. That, I guess, is easier than actually having to interface with solutions to the problems that you're saying that you have. because she has presented in no uncertain terms solutions we have never heard from him. But you want the vibes. You want the vibes. That is clear. That is clear. Now, let me get to this the substance of what she said, because that was my takeaway. I mean, that was my takeaway was and I still haven't gotten a chance to do the how was this close, because he gets to lose the election every week. I still haven't got a chance to do that piece. I have so much content that I have created. I will find a way to do that. I will find a way to do that before the election, but this is crazy. I mean, I'm watching it and I'm like, I can't believe. Like, if you're not on stage at Trump's rally, why are you there? You have nothing in common with those people on stage. Not only do they not care about you, they are willing to throw you under the bus, as we have seen with the hurricane disinformation. Not only do they not care about you, they will actively exacerbate a situation in which you desperately need help for their own gain. I mean, really, like I if you are not on stage, because I understand why the people on stage are there. I get why all the people on stage and sitting there, but if you are not on stage at the Trump rally, what are you doing? And you know, I mean, all right. Let me go. I can't be the only one that was thrown off by that red light. I mean, that red light, that red light. I can't be the only one that was thrown off by that red light. I can't be the only one that was thrown off by that red light. Also, the sirens in the beginning. I was mad Kamala didn't go off script with that one. I mean, there was such a viral moment with this, just waiting for you with the siren. Now, granted, them sirens, I can tell you, as somebody who regularly tries to record content in DC, those sirens are real. Okay, those sirens are real. I can bring in either of my editors and think about all the time I sit here just waiting out sirens all the time. Those sirens are real. There was such a viral moment there for you, Kamala. It was right there. It was right there. Oh, that killed me. I did miss a section in the middle there. My daughter came up to my wife was putting my son to bed, and my daughter came up because she said that she was watching it downstairs, and she wanted to watch it with me, and she seemed legitimately interested, and she went and looked and saw that Kamala Harris was on the TV, and she said, "I have a picture of her in my book." She has a book where she's learning to read, and it's a women's it's about powerful women. And V, for the letter V, they have vice president, and they have a picture of Kamala Harris. So she said, she looked and said, "I got a picture of her in my book," and she turned to Kamala Harris, and she was excited to be able to see Kamala in real life, and that was special. That was really special. That was worth missing. A portion of her speech. And so you guys had to bear with me during that section in the chat. I was a little bit quiet, but that's because my daughter was sitting on my lap, and I couldn't say much. But it felt good to know that I was doing the thing that was best for her. Right. I don't know how that would have felt to be sitting here with my daughter on my lap, watching a man speak that's trying to take rights away from her. That's an experience that only MAGA will know. Um, that gets to, again, the cognitive dissonance that I outlined in the beginning. She said that he has an enemies list. I have a to-do list. That's clear. That's clear. That's clear. I mean, one of my favorite things that the Harris campaign did when it talked about how he makes every issue about himself. And it's easy to see because he makes everything about himself, but he can't not do that. You know, it's like him not being triggered when you talk about his people leaving his rallies. He can't not, he's that's too baked into who he is and his self-identity. He can't not make it about himself. So I'm sure many of the people that continue to follow him just either ignored this or maybe they never even heard it. But once you hear that he makes everything about himself, it shows itself every time he opens his mouth. The enemies list, to-do list was phenomenal. And I'll end by saying I appreciate that she talked about working across the aisle. I appreciate she talked about the support that she's gotten from Republicans. And so I talked about, you know, racism and sexism is a hell of a drug, talking about people middle down when it comes to class. I've talked about this whole ethnicity discussion that we have had. I need to know, what does a MAGA make of the litany of Republican support that Harris has received? What do they make of his cabinet not endorsing him this time around? Headlined by Mike Pence. And as Kamala has said over and over again, the reason that job was available for J.D. Vance. How do you excuse that? If I'm going to take your opinion seriously, right? The things that you say about Donald Trump, him fighting for America and all these other things, right? America first and this, that, and the other thing, you know, radical left lunatics. And if I'm gonna take those things to be things that you actually believe, why would that not be something that those that were the closest around him also believe, if that were true? How do you process that? I desperately need to know, how does a MAGA, how do you process that? And I see somebody said Aaron said they don't care, or Marcella said they think it's betrayal. Why? But see, let me go to what Aaron said about they don't care, right? Not that I disagree with that, because I mean clearly inevitably they don't care, right? They've continued to support this man. But this is the point I'm trying to make, is I can either come away thinking that you have convinced yourself that these people are all somehow turncoats, like what was said, like it's a betrayal, like all these people have been so close to him and they have decided to betray him. For what reason? You know, like for what reason that they have decided to betray him, but I still believe in the ideals and the things that he's saying. but you can't give me a legitimate reason for why these people have decided to betray him other than the elephant in the room, which is that he's full of shit. Right? If we don't want to say they betrayed him because he's full of it, if we don't want to admit that, because that makes all of this a fraud, right? That means I gotta take my flags down and I gotta get rid of my hats, I gotta get rid of all that, right? So we want to ignore the elephant in the room that he's full of it. Then you have to give me another legitimate reason why this litany of people, the ones that were the closest to him, are not supporting him this time around. And even a lot of the ones that are have in the past talked about how problematic or stupid or dangerous he is, J.D. Vance and Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham. I just have to try and understand, because if one of those things were true, if there was one Democrat, Nancy Pelosi, Jim Clyburn, AOC, Raphael Warnock, Pete Buttigieg, whoever it is, Obama, if it was one Democrat, one who had said on the record what Mitch McConnell said, or what Lindsey Graham said, or what J.D. Vance said, or what Mike Pence said, will just go on and on and on. If it was one, they would bring it up every single day. They would bring it up every day. Do you realize you would never talk to a MAGA? Ever. You would never talk to a MAGA, and they don't bring up this person. You have a litany behind Donald Trump. And I need to understand how that is landing in your brain. Because you don't want to admit that this is all a lie. Because then you have to feel like a lie, right? Then you have to feel like a fraud if you admit that this is a lie, right? So you don't want to admit that. So what are you telling yourself? What are you telling yourself? Because if you're telling yourself that these people have betrayed him and they are weapons of the left and this and why? Help me. And maybe I'll just have to continue to work this out over the course of the week that we have to election day. If you are middle down, if you are Muslim, black, gay, female, whatever the case, Latino, whatever the case may be, there isn't a valid, rational justification to support Donald Trump. There's not. There's no valid, rational justification to support Donald Trump. If you are a white man, middle up, you do have a rational justification to support Donald Trump. Now, you have to swallow totally excusing the damage that he's done to these other groups. You have to not care about these other groups. But for you, personally, white men middle up, I get it. I'm not even talking to you. The rest of y'all, help me. Help me with that one.